Bilang nasa isang islang pantropiko, us Filipinos are used to having the sun out for the majority of the year. Though it may mean that we can enjoy the warm weather all year round, this can also mean attaining immense sun exposure that will lead to illnesses such as skin cancer. So, what do we do to block out these hindrances from disrupting our activities? I'm Doc Rob, a medical biochemistry professor and general practitioner, and for today's episode, your host, welcoming you to Lifeline, the show where we improve our lives by feeding our minds. For today's episode, I am with one of our dermatologists from the UST Hospital. We have here today with us si Dr. Angela Comagun. We are so happy to have you here po, here at Lifeline, and I'm sure you are too, Doktora.
Hello, Rob. Good. First of all, I would like to greet everyone a good day, and it's thank you for inviting me here in Lifeline.
So, as a way to kickstart this episode for today, no, Doc, would you like to describe to us po what it is like to be a dermatologist?
Well, a dermatologist is a physician, okay, who specializes in diseases of the skin, not only of the skin but also of the hair and also of the nails.
So, for my first question, Dr. Kumagun, how would you define skin cancer to our viewers?
So, skin cancer refers to a condition where malignant or cancerous cells form within the skin tissue. But before we learn about malignancy or neoplasms, let's know first what a benign lesion is. Okay? So, let's set an example for a mole. So, everybody has a mole, or what we call in dermatology a nevus. Okay, so usually a regular mole is just brown, it's well defined, well demarcated, with no signs. There are no ulcers, no bleeding, no pain. When you have a malignant transformation, okay, you already have other signs, in terms of the borders. It may not be well defined. It may be accompanied by bleeding or a change in color, or even a pain, okay? So those are some signs when we might be dealing with some skin cancers.
Alright, thank you Dr. Kumagun, no? Kasi po, karamihan ngayon sa mga kapwa natin na pag naririnig nila yung term na cancer o cancer, natatakot na po agad sila na baka mabawasan yung buhay, no?
Yes.
O baka mas delikado na po, ganyan. Pero meron po kasi tayo mga tinatawag na benign at malignant na na-explain po ni Dr. Kumagun kanina, no? Na kapag benign, ito yung mga early stages na medyo tamed pa, no? O good pa yung natin, yung condition. But pag naging malignant na siya, ito na yung medyo delikado na at kailangan na nating tutukan. Okay. So, thank you po sa pagsagot ng ating first question, Dr. Kumagun. Okay, so punta po tayo sa pangalawang tanong. Okay, second question, Doc, is, as a dermatologist, what are the most common types of skin cancers that you get to handle? And can you give us a short description of each type?
Okay, so there are many different kinds of skin cancers, but the top three most common cancers that we see are basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. So for basal cell carcinoma, this is the most common, and there are different varieties. We have like your superficial basal cell carcinoma. We have the nodular, which is very common. In the Philippines, we have the pigmented type of basal cell carcinoma, and others like the infiltrative or morphic or the basaloid type. Okay? So for the basal cell carcinoma, it's very commonly seen in sun-exposed or areas like the face and the neck. Since there are many different varieties, they can present with a papule or a pearly-like papule, or even a pigmented type, or even a papulonodule, or even erythematous or red papule. So it's very common, okay, and that's the most common one. For the squamous cell carcinoma, also UV exposure is very important, okay? They can be a red papillonodule with some scaling. You also can see it on the face, on the neck, or even on the arms. Compared to basal cell carcinoma, which basal cell is slowly and it's a very indolent growth, but it can be very destructive. Your squamous cell carcinoma is more invasive, so it can metastasize to other parts of the body also. So the importance of knowing or diagnosing it early is very important. The third common, although for Filipinos fortunately not very common, would be melanoma. And melanoma usually begins or originates from our pigment producing cells, which are the melanocytes. Okay, so they may look like moles, okay, but they have changes in them, okay, which we have to watch out for.
Okay, so let's recap no what Doc Kumagon said for the second question. So for the skin cancer types, the three most common are basal cell carcinoma, you have squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. We mentioned sun exposure or UV ray exposure. And that brings us, Doc, to the third question. How do you link skin cancers to sun exposure? Meron po bang dapat na parang iwasang oras? May best time po ba tayo para mag-stay lang sa sun? Or meron po ba talagang connection between those two?
Okay, so skin cancer is closely related to sun exposure. And this is due to the damaging effect of the UV radiation. Okay, so this UV radiation can cause damage to the DNA in the skin cells, okay, from which you can have uncontrolled growth, okay, and the development of cancerous cells later on. So when you have cumulative prolonged sun exposure, okay, this will increase the risk of mutation and therefore having your skin cancer. Also very important is the intensity and the duration of the sun exposure. So the most intense heat will be 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So in between, okay, which is the middle of our day, right? Okay, so of course we have to practice photo protection also. But so if you intend to walk safely, maybe between 8 to 10 also, okay? Number 2 is the type of UV radiation, okay? So we have UVA, UVB, UVC. UVC is usually filtered off by the clouds, okay? But our UVB, which is a shorter wavelength, okay, B causes burning. So when you go out swimming or you go to the beach and you get a suntan or you get red, it's because of UVB. Now, UVA is the longer wavelength, okay, and A is the one responsible for aging. And also, both of them, A and B, can also cause DNA damage to the skin cells, which can give rise also to your skin cancer also, okay?
Actually, no, Doc, parang yung mga facts po na nasabi nyo kanina for that question, pwede din natin siyang i-apply dun sa mga skincare choices na ginagawa natin ngayon. I've even read and heard sa social media, no, na parang if you wanna start on a skincare, invest on a good sunscreen.
Yeah, SPF is your new BFF.
Yes.
Okay.
I like that. Doc.
Yes, okay.
SPF is our new BFF.
Yeah.
So SPF is the sun protection factor
Yes,
that we get
SPF
from.
means sun protection factor.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what we get from the sunscreens, no, the skincare products that we use.
To the
Yeah.
SPF, so you have 15, okay, you have 15, you have 30, 50, so at least 30, the better if it's 50, okay. Number 2 is the number just means like if it's 30, you can stay out 30 times longer than without sun protection,
Mhm.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
Doc.
And then an SPF, the newer ones have names attached to it. So you have UVA, UVB, HEVL, and EIR, which means you want to have a broad spectrum sunscreen that protects you from UVA, UVB, and then high energy visible light. That's what it. Lights like this, okay, contain UV too. Our lights in our cell phones and our gadgets, iPads, phones, they emit blue light, okay, and even infrared, which is heat that you feel, okay. So a broad spectrum, a good one, will protect you from all of that.
Some types of skin cancer or sunlight exposure can be cumulative.
Mm-mm.
So habang bata pa tayo, dapat alagaan na rin natin yung skin natin
Yeah.
by using the right skincare products. Mhm. Okay, so I guess that's it for the first part of our questions, Doktora. So now, let's move on, no, to our fun game here on Lifeline. This is called the Mythical Operation, where we dissect facts from misinformation. It's a fairly simple game where I'll be reading a few statements. Then after po, Doc, i-confirm po namin sa inyo kung ito po bang mga statements na ito ay isang fact or isang myth lamang. So first statement, Doc. Having darker skin means not worrying about skin cancer. Is this a fact or myth?
So it's a myth, okay? So it's very important that we use a sunscreen. Number 2 is our skin type. We are Filipinos. We're brown skin. According to the Fitzpatrick classification, we're type 4. So if you see Filipinos, you will see like some are fairer, okay? Some are darker, okay? Our brown skin is actually an SPF 4. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need to use a sunscreen. As I mentioned, we have many cases of skin cancer, specifically basal cell carcinoma.
Parang before, naiisip ko na kapag darker skin, mas protected against skin cancers, but it's not actually that way pala. So that's a myth.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you, Doc, no, for debunking that statement. Okay, so for the second statement, Doc Kumagun, wearing a hat or using an umbrella is enough to protect someone from skin cancer. Is
Okay.
this a fact or myth?
Okay, so it's a myth, okay? So it's good that if you're able to use an umbrella, okay? But of course, if you're swimming in the beach or, running or having some sports, then you can't use an umbrella, okay? So you need a sunscreen to protect yourself.
Parang doble layer of protection. So that's better. Okay, so thank you, Doc. So for the third statement, skin cancers are always easy to spot during their early stages. Is this a fact or myth?
Actually, it's a myth, okay? Some depends, no? As I mentioned, there are many different types of skin cancers. Maybe for me as a dermatologist, because I've had many years of experience, I'm able to spot it, okay? But for a regular lay person, they might think it's just a mole or just a pimple or just a normal growth or a wart, okay? And they don't mind it, okay? So the best is really to seek consult if you're not sure what it is.
Actually, that's a general practice that we should emulate po, no, Doc, na kapag meron tayong hindi sigurado. And that is it for our round of questions, Doktora. I know that our audience are eager to learn more about this topic. So stay tuned because after this break, we'll be back with Doktora Kumagun to further deeper our discussion about skin cancer.
Part of this global activity of spreading awareness against cancer. UST Hospital, together with the Tomasian community, is working together to educate our medical staff and patients to contribute in making this world a cancer-free place. Through this effort, may we promote healthy lifestyle, enhance awareness among Filipino people, and make a mark in reducing the global impact of cancer. We salute the men and women who continuously fight to survive and win this battle against cancer. Together, let's close the gap in the treatment of cancer care.
The will to live is a natural desire for all human persons, especially those who are battling diseases just like cancer. The whole Tomasian community, especially the University of Santo Tomas Hospital, through its Benavides Cancer Institute, commits itself in its fight against cancer. Together as Tomasians, let us support those people who have dedicated their lives in terms of their research and study about cancer. Let us hope and pray for cancer patients that they might have renewed faith and hope that their health may be restored and that happiness may reign in their families. God bless us all.
And we are back. We have talked a lot about skin cancer so far during the first segment of our show, from general information to debunking myths. But there are still a lot of questions left to be answered. So, without further ado, let's proceed to the next segment of our show. So, for my next sets of questions, Doctora, so I'll start off with, among all the steps in diagnosing skin cancer, what is the most crucial and why?
There are several steps, in diagnosing skin cancer. All of them are actually crucial. The very first one will be visualization. So if you go to your healthcare provider or to your dermatologist, we would examine your skin, see if there are any abnormalities or skin changes or any complaints of the patient. Number two is a dermatoscope to magnify, and examine the skin lesion, and we're able to identify whether it's a benign or malignant lesion or a suspicious lesion. And the very crucial step actually is the biopsy. So the biopsy is, I have another here. It's a punch biopsy for you, here. This is what we use to get a piece of tissue, and then we submit it to the pathologist or maybe a dermatopathologist who's able to analyze what the tissue is, the lesion is, and give us a proper diagnosis as to what type of cancer we are dealing. So there are some types of cancers that we have to do tests like a CT scan or MRI to see if metastasis and look for other metastasis too. So it's very important to be able to diagnose this early so we can treat them early too.
So merong dala si Doc Comagon dito na dalawang handy tools ng dermatologists, no? Yung dermatoscope natin. So the dermatoscope is just like a mini microscope which is directed, no, for use sa ating mga skin conditions. Sabi ni Doc kanina na pag ginamit nila yon, no, kaya nilang ma-assess yung mga skin tissues natin. Okay? And meron pang isang dala si Doc dito, yung tool na ginagamit for punch biopsy. Okay? So that's one form of biopsy where doctors usually get tissues dun sa mga areas of concern na tinatawag. So yung tissue na yon na nakuha ko from this part of my hand, ipapadala daw natin siya sa pathologist para ma-examine kung ano ba yung specific, no, na condition na meron ako. Kung ba't siya nagkakaganito at ganyan. Okay. So nabanggit ni Doc sa atin, no, yung mga important ways of diagnosing and knowing if you really have skin cancer and what type, no, do you have. So now for the next part, after diagnosis, of course comes the treatment, no, for our patients. So for this question, Doc, there are different kinds of treatments for skin cancer. What is the importance of knowing their differences and their procedures?
Okay. So since there are many different types of skin cancers, it's before we go into treatment, we would like to know the type of skin cancer, if it has metastasis, the location of the skin cancer, if it's on the face or in other hidden areas of the body or in sensitive areas or even other comorbidities that the patient has. So in terms of treatment, number one would always be surgery. So just like any cancer, you want to cut off the cancer tissue off, okay? So we would have excision. We can also use radiation therapy, okay? So depending on the type of cancer you're dealing with.
There are a wide array of choices for treating skin cancers, and it actually depends on what type of skin cancer a patient has, no? And depending on that type, doon din malalaman kung ano ba yung best mode of treatment na pwede nating gawin sa kanya. It can be a single treatment or a combination of the treatments that Doc mentioned a while ago. So, after diagnosis, no, na-treat na rin po natin yung patient, paano naman po natin mape-prevent, Doc, yung pagkakaroon ng skin cancer? Pwede po ba siyang ma-prevent and paano po?
Mhm. So preventing skin cancer is actually involving adopting a combination of many protective measure and lifestyle changes. Okay, one is limit sun exposure. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, between 10 and 4 p.m. Okay, the use of a sunscreen. Okay, I mentioned earlier the use of a broad spectrum sunscreen that protects you from all the wavelengths, okay, including visible light and blue light, okay? So you can also wear your sunglasses. You can have a UV protected or UV blocking sunglasses are very important, okay?
Parang mas makakatulong actually sa atin yung pagpe-prevent rather than us being treated for these certain conditions. Sabi nga natin, no, prevention is always better than cure. My next question, Doc. A change of pace is always difficult. How can we encourage and help those struggling with skin cancer to embrace this change?
Okay. Actually, there are many ways that you can do to help patients with skin cancer. One is support, the emotional support that you can give to your patient. Listen to them, okay? Be empathic, like, put yourself into their place. You can also learn about skin cancer so you can understand what they're going through. Others can be a physical way of supporting them. You can accompany them to your treatments or to your doctor's appointments, or some might be financially challenged and you can help them, okay? Others can also be even simple things like a meal, okay, like that, okay? So that's providing physical support, okay? And also promote healthy lifestyle. So encourage sun protection. So we've mentioned that many times. Having a healthy diet, exercise. So encourage exercise, okay? Because that can allow them to improve their mood also. Educating yourself, okay? And also offer other distractions. So para hindi maaliw naman sila, you can do other activities that can distract them from their illness, okay? You also have to be patient with them. So some patients, everybody has their good and bad days, okay? So offer yourself or your support consistently also. Ganyan.
Thank you, Doc. And that is a very good example, no, Doc, of what it means to be a Tomasian physician. I agree po dun sa lahat ng sinabi nyo. When I was studying in med school here at UST, isa yon sa mga values na na-instill po sa atin na if you're gonna be a doctor, you don't just treat the person's health physically, but you also treat them emotionally, socially, psychologically, and spiritually.
So I think it's also very important that you inspect yourself, okay? Or you can have a handheld mirror to look, okay? So there are areas in the body that you can't see, like the back, your back. I just wanted to stress that. A is for asymmetry, okay? So moles are mirror images because a lot of patients will come, is this cancer? Is this cancer? Okay. So a mole, as I mentioned in the very beginning, is they're mirror images of each other. So when you cut the mole into half, one side is the same as the other side. Okay. So you have there. B is for border. Okay. So border, usually moles have very well-defined, well-demarcated borders. Okay. And if the borders are notched or maybe not very clear, okay, or extending, so that's one thing you have to be wary of. C is for color changes. So usually our moles are brown or black. All of a sudden you notice that the mole is blue or red, okay, or D can be diameter, okay. So sometimes all of a sudden you notice the mole that has been this small is now twice its size in a month's time. E is evolving. So you notice that the mole is different. Okay, now it bleeds easily, or now the color is different. Okay, or it's bigger. So those are the things that you have to watch out for.
So ayun,
Yeah.
nabanggit sa atin ni Doc, no, na even though tayo-tayo lang, no, personally kaya na din nating i-inspect yung mga sarili natin for these certain conditions. And thank you din po, Doktora Kumagon, for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Rob, for being such a good host.
Skin cancer affects millions of people each year. Moreover, as stated by the American Cancer Society, this type of cancer is the most common worldwide. We send our hearts to those who are struggling with this condition. Hopefully, this episode helps you and those in your bubble to further comprehend this matter. And in addition, may this episode also lead to awareness about skin cancer to all. Always feel the roar by following us on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube page at UST Tiger TV and at UST Tiger Radio. And I myself am also on social media. You can follow my journey in becoming a heart surgeon. That's at Robert Katz. So that's 3-letter A, T, and Z. Once again, I am Doc Rob, your host for today's episode of Lifeline, where we improve our lives by feeding our minds.